So the presidential debates were last night, and actually, as it turned out, interestingly enough, they lived up to the hype. I wasn't expecting much. I was expecting Duda. I had heard that both the Hillary and the Trump strategies were to just let the other person be the other person. So I was expecting it to be an hour and a half of everyone just kind of twiddling their thumbs at each other. Thankfully, that wasn't what it was. Potentially, it might have honestly been because of Trump that it wasn't that, because Trump can't help himself. So the second something's mentioned that is slightly negative towards him, he's going to go on a rant about how he's great and he's winning with this strategy. So because of that, I think that it ended up helping the debates, and honestly, I think it ended up hurting him, because I think if you put the two on the stage and you just make it so that there's no real talk, there's no real policy, Trump honestly kind of would end up winning, because people just do not like Hillary. So, and people don't like Trump either, but it's really Trump, because Hillary, when you just look at her, most of the time, she has this look of being the ultimate insider, because she is. So, that's a winning strategy for Trump, to just kind of to let her emphasize that. But in any case, that's not what happened. So, to talk about what actually did happen in the debate, who won? Hillary won, as far as I'm concerned, overall. It was kind of split into three parts. First half hour, second half hour, third half hour. Trump annihilated her on that first half hour. He came in, he was Mike Tyson in that first half hour. He came in swinging at her, swinging, knocking her out. She could not respond. When he mentioned NAFTA and the TPP, her calling TPP the gold standard, Bill Clinton signing NAFTA, she had no response to that. She just kind of had to sit there and be like that, in order to, and because that was really the only thing she could say. Those are truths, and she loses when Trump emphasizes that. And he was being a loudmouth about it. He was pressing her on it. He was, why, your husband signed it into law. Your husband signed it into law. And I don't think she had to have been expecting it. If she wasn't, she needs better trainers for her debate strategies, because it's freaking Trump, so you have to expect him to be a loudmouth. But she didn't act like she expected it. She didn't really have a good response. And he also kept bringing up on a lot of issues about how, she's been working on, you've been in power for 30 years and you haven't solved this problem, so why are you going to solve it now? Which is actually a relatively good point for him to make, and she also kind of didn't really have a response for that. She was one of her weakest moments was when her response to that was, well, it hasn't been quite that long, which was just it didn't look good, and it certainly didn't make her look any better. But after that first half hour, it turned, I think. The second half hour, Hillary was winning. She wasn't annihilating, but she was winning. And the third half hour, Trump had petered out. He was done. And like Mike Tyson, but in a match that Mike Tyson loses, if he doesn't win in that first half hour, that first round, the first few rounds, then he just tires himself out. And that showed last night, because he was getting run over a lot of the time by Hillary, and Hillary's not exactly a big loudmouth. She's not exactly a high energy person a lot of the time. So it showed that, one, he hasn't been preparing, which has been reported. A lot of his staffers were concerned about his lack of preparation, whereas Hillary came to that debate prepared for a lot of what Trump said. I don't know how much you can prepare for the NAFTA and the TPP thing, because those are just facts that she said it was the gold standard and that Bill signed NAFTA. So there's only so much she can do. But on most other points, Hillary actually got him pretty bad. So she mentioned his tax returns, about how about what is he hiding, that he's not releasing them, which is good. You plant that uncertainty, because why isn't he releasing them? Every presidential candidate has released them. And she said it either he's not as rich, he's not paying federal income tax, and what ends up being funny is that when she said this, Trump's kind of snuck in because I'm smart that he's not paying his federal taxes, and also in the debate, Trump had a big thing about how corporations are not paying their fair share of goods coming into the states, and that they're when they outsource jobs, he's saying that they don't get taxed. And when I watched this, I was watching TYT's The Young Turks coverage of it, and Cenk Uygur, I believe, mentioned that there's actually a 3% tax on stuff coming into the U.S. So I'm not entirely sure. I think he might have been lying there, but I'm not entirely sure. But regardless, that's not even really the point, because the point is that he's talking about corporations not paying their fair share, but then he's bragging that he's not paying his fair share. So that outs him as being a big hypocrite and kind of as someone who really doesn't care about about paying his fair share. So that was a big loss for Trump, I thought. Another big loss for Trump came in the form of when she was mentioning a lot of his failed businesses, and he didn't really have much of a response for that. She brought out how he doesn't pay a lot of the people who he employs for, architects, painters, all these people. And apparently she said that there was one of the people in the audience was actually one of the people that he ended up stiffing. And his response again was, oh, maybe they didn't do a good job, which was funny because the person she specifically mentioned, the building, I believe it was, that he designed immediately went into use. So it had to have been a pretty decent job. But regardless, you have to pay people for the work they do. So that's not very good for Trump. One of the worst moments for Hillary was honestly something that she caused herself. Was in the first half hour, she was talking about Trump's tax brackets and how they're, it's classic trickle-down economics, cut taxes on the rich, increase them for the poor. So she was talking about it, and she made this really, really, really horrible joke where she called it trumped-up trickle-down economics. And it sounded like a bunch of 50-year-olds and 60-year-olds in a room were trying to appeal to 20-year-olds, and they wrote this joke for them hip young millennials with their iPods and their PSPs and their PS triples and all this stuff. And it sounded like that, and my head was about to tunnel into my neck in shame from hearing that. So that was the thing, is overall, Hillary, I think, won, though, because it was just a lot of those worst moments were more focused in that first half hour, and I think she ended up hitting Trump a lot better after that. The question, though, is whether or not this is going to affect polling, because that's a little bit less sure, because currently the polls we kind of have out are mostly non-scientific polls, so they're just like one of those internet polls where you go on, like SurveyMonkey poll, you go on, who do you think won, click. There's no real science behind it, it's just they put on a poll on their site. And a lot of those actually show Trump winning, which isn't good. It's not really good to show for Hillary that it, if anything, shows Trump winning. But I believe it's the only scientific poll out now, which is a CNN poll, actually has has Hillary winning is 62%, according to their poll about who won the debates. And that one was, I believe, scientific. The only thing is that apparently the demographics for the poll were 41% Democrats, whereas there was only 21% Republican, so it was skewed more towards Democrats just kind of inherently. But I think this is a good thing anyways, because I don't think Hillary's problem is Trump supporters. I mean, it is in a way because they're not going to vote, but that's not the demographic she should be aiming for, because they're not going to vote for her no matter what. Trump could have come on and just spewed an entire line of racial slurs, like just outright, and shot everyone in the room, and people and his Trump supporters would still vote for him. So that's not who she should be trying to appeal to. She needs to get her base back, because she really messed up when it came to Bernie Sanders, because she alienated that crowd. It was 52% of Bernie supporters are planning on voting for Hillary, and she needs to get that number up. That needs to be like 80, 90%. Honestly, it should probably be more than that, because I mean, it's very worrying when your entire almost half of your Democratic base is like, I'm either voting for Trump or I'm voting third party, or I'm just not voting. So she needs to get her base back. She needs to get moderates and undecided voters back. And I think that this debate will help with that slightly. There's going to be an issue about, whether or not people actually watch the whole debates, because she did lose in that first half hour. So if somebody just came in and watched that first half hour, they could have been like, oh, fuck this, and then they leave. And then that would be bad for Hillary. But, it's going to be a lot of factors. Good news, in a way, yeah, I would say it's good news, is that apparently about 100 million people watched this debate, and that's good, since I think Hillary did win it. So I think it'll end up helping her in the polls. Not that much. But the thing is that if it doesn't help her in the polls, if Trump ends up getting an advantage based on this, I think at that point I almost just want to call the election for Trump, because at that point I don't really see what Hillary's attack plan is, other than if she went completely Bernie after that. But I don't think she's capable of doing that. I don't think she will do that. So if Trump, as I said, if Trump ends up coming out of this looking better, Hillary's in trouble. And so it's a little bit of a mixed message about what's going on with that. Unscientific polls are largely showing Trump winning, but the only the scientific poll we really have right now shows Hillary winning. It should be mentioned, Nate Silver says that he thinks Hillary won, and he thinks it should help her in the polls. But again, he also believes that it's not going to do much, which is reasonable. But I think she helped make herself look more like a human and less like a politician last night. And so, for an example, Trump pressed her about the emails. And her response, which was honestly the best response I think she could have given, was that she messed up. She shouldn't have had a private server. That was wrong of her. And that if she could go back, she would change it. Do I necessarily believe her? Not really. But that's because I just kind of inherently don't believe anything either of them say. Like, when a lot of them were speaking during this, I kind of tuned out. I immediately had an assumption that most of what they were saying was lies. Regardless if they were using facts, I don't trust that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. So a lot of it was demeanor. And when she did that, it showed a human side, which was good, because that's what Hillary needs, because people don't really believe she has this human side. And Trump showed that he lacks a human side, because he could not admit to anything wrong. He would not fess up to having, been one of the leaders of the birther movement. Even after Obama produced his long-form birth certificate, he's still going on, but then he takes credit for having ended it, and all this stuff with his federal taxes. He said he was smart for not paying them, and this is stuff that I think ultimately can hurt him. It's with undecided voters and moderates, and I think that this is going to get some people to be like, yeah, no, that guy's kind of nuts. I think one of the best indications probably for Hillary in this debate was when they had an argument over temperament, and Trump ultimately said that he has a great temperament, he has a winning temperament, and everyone in the room laughed. And I think that was really telling. Because that was honestly probably the biggest laugh of the night, was him just saying that he had a good temperament. And that goes to show that's like that, like the mere thought that Trump is stable is a joke to a lot of people. And mind you, this is also an audience that were cheering at a lot of stuff Trump said. So it was probably a relatively balanced audience between Trump supporters and Clinton supporters. Again, no studies on that, but just based on how audience reactions were kind of going. But yeah, that was pretty telling. It was about as telling as when they had the video of I forget his name, but they had a recent video of, it was another politician who was, I think he was in his doing his primaries. I'm sorry, I didn't look too much into it, but I saw the video where he said that he worked with Hillary and that he admired her honesty, and everyone in the audience laughed. So it's this interesting election where we're between two jokes of candidates, but Trump was there, and Trump was the one who said that he had a good temperament. And everyone knows that's a lie. So I think that does ultimately hurt him, because it goes to show that he's completely delusional about his qualifications as a president. And that I think, and I certainly hope that does end up showing, and that in the polls. So yeah, I think Hillary won. It's not going to be that big of a difference, but I do think it's going to help her get a bounce for future debates. She'll probably come more prepared. I don't really trust Trump to prepare, because he just doesn't do it. Like, that's a very consistent problem in his campaigns, is when they want him to read briefing notes, he doesn't. He just wants to watch TV, and that's going to hurt him. But if he can actually bring out Hillary's bigger flaws in future debates and hammer her more, if he can actually have stamina, which was funny because he had a whole conversation with her about how she doesn't have the stamina to be president, even though she has kind of showed in the past that she kind of does, because she's done these hours and hours long, meetings and Senate hearings. And whereas he kind of showed that he can only last about like a half an hour on a debate stage, she outlasted him. So I think she definitely showed that she has stamina over him. And yeah, so in any case, he was talking about so he showed that he lacked that stamina. So if he can gain that stamina in future debates, he could probably end up pulling ahead, but we'll see, because Trump doesn't really have a good track record of kind of, admitting to his flaws and dealing with them. So I don't think so, but yeah, we'll end up seeing.